Well, I think it's all ready to go.
Do you want to come sit over here, Brenda? Where you had lunch?
So many fun animals all around here.
The animals.
I got the chair pulled up for you. Okay, right here.
I'm excited to talk to you. If you want headphones, I have them. You don't have
So
to
you
use
can hear
them
what
though.
she's saying pretty clear. And
Either
then
way.
You see this right here in front of you? You can just talk into that. You don't have to lean in close to it, but that's where the microphone is.
Okay.
Do you want to wear these headphones or you want to just see how it goes?
You don't have to.
You want to wear them?
Yeah.
All right. There you go.
That sounds pretty good, doesn't it? You can really hear
you.
us. I can hear me.
Oh, yes.
Right? Well, I don't know much about your life, but I'm excited to hear it. But where were you born?
West Virginia,
Okay, where in West Virginia?
at a little town called Fire Cove,
Oh.
which was a coal mining camp.
I heard that you have some coal mining stories.
Well, it's a rather exciting place to be from, and it was rather interesting in the days. It's not a lifestyle that exists anymore,
Oh,
and so that is probably the unique thing about it.
okay.
Is it does not exist anymore in the manner in which it did when I was growing up.
Okay. I guess this is a silly question. Do we just not use coal mines anymore to get coal?
No, they certainly do, and if in fact they manufacture more coal or mine more coal still yet in the United States than they did even in the heyday, as I would refer to it, when I was growing up. But it's just done differently. More machinery and technology has come along.
Yeah.
And so that is what it is. And I thought that perhaps I'd describe as an intro here a little bit of background on the setup, and I'll use my coal camp as an illustration, if I may.
Sure. I'd love that.
Okay, my coal camp was called Fire Cove, West Virginia, and it was really at least three coal camps in one. And they were divided all along the river and along the railroad track, headed north and south in this particular area. On one side of the river was the actual town called Fire Cove. On the other side of the river, which is where we lived, was a town called Lilybrook.
Huh.
And then there were other little towns around it that were owned by independent coal companies that were sort of unnamed, really, for all purposes. They were owned and went by the name of whoever was operating the coal mine. And so that was the sort of the geographical layout. The interesting thing about it is like I said, it was owned by 3+ coal mining entities. One of which we lived in, as I mentioned, Lilybrook is where I lived. Across the way was the Fire Cove Coal Company, and then the other little independent operators were scattered up and down what we call the hollers. in those days. And that's the way they were run. The coal camps were didn't have much going for them as far as entertainment went, but they were all similar, except they looked a little bit different. Lilybrook, where I lived, all the houses were painted white, and all pretty much all of them were identical in structure, and most of them looked exterior. From an exterior standpoint, they looked alike. Across the way in Fire Cove, all the houses were yellow.
Oh.
And it was a horrible yellow. It wasn't a pretty yellow.
Oh no.
And then the areas where the black folks lived, which one was called, what was the name of that?
don't know.
Some bottom.
Okay.
It was down the river a bit.
Uh-huh.
And it was called something bottom. And that's where part of the black folks lived. The rest of the black folks, for the most part, lived north of what we call it downtown.
Okay.
And they lived in the north part, and it didn't have a name except everybody, including the people who lived there, referred to it as, I'll use the term, in town.
Okay.
And that's where the rest of the black folks lived up that way. But it was all grouped in one big deal, and there were approximately, I figured this out the other day when we'd talked about this first, that I'd say that there were about, at that time and at its peak, there were about 150 or so houses there.
Wow, so a lot of people in that.
That was a
camp.
lot of people. It was a big coal camp.
Yeah.
And it was, I would say that, like my own personal family, that most of them were rather prolific in having children, and most of those houses had 5 children and the parents in it.
Wow, that's
So
a lot of people.
that put a lot of people in that little confined area.
So did you have 4 siblings like most people, or no?
I had 4.
Oh,
yes.
wow, okay.
And most people I knew had 4 or 6
That's
at
a
least.
lot. So where
So-
are you in the lineup? Are you the oldest or in the middle?
No, I'm the next to young.
Okay.
I had 2 older brothers and an older sister and a younger brother.
Okay.
And we had the 5 of us, and living across, I'll call it a street, but they weren't streets. They were dirt roads between the rows of houses. Across the street, and one house up, lived my grandmother
Oh,
and grandfather and one aunt who was still single. And then next to her was another aunt and uncle, and another aunt and uncle and their children lived a couple of rows over, and another aunt and uncle lived over in the Fire Coast side,
okay.
and the rest of us all lived on the Lilybrook side.
So you really had your whole community kind of right there. That's so nice.
And that'll tie into one of my tales here.
Oh, good.
At a minute.
I can't wait.
A little bit later. But that's the way it was. I mentioned I called it a river running through the area. It was not officially a river by virtue of designation by the state or anybody. It was a creek. It was called Piney Creek, but it was bigger than most rivers in Texas.
Oh.
And so it was a pretty large body of water flowing through there. And it was, the headwaters of it was upstream of us, which was by about 5 or 6 miles.
Okay.
And so it all came out of the ground up there. Now, the river was, was almost the center point of the activities during the cool or the warm times of the year. It was used. People fished in it,
Oh, yeah.
and the kids, like my little buddies and myself, would build a raft or two during the summer.
Out of like wood?
And out of wood and try to ride them. Our intention was that I'd mentioned that the railroad track came up through there, and it would come from the main depot 25, 30 miles away, and to haul the coal that they mined in the coal mines each day. And so it was done to haul the coal out. But in the summertime, the boys would get together and sort of have a contest. We would build a raft with my little group, another group, and another
Yeah.
group. And our objective would be to get on the raft and go to the place where the river emptied into a larger river, and then catch the train.
Oh, catch it like coming back?
Yes, catch it coming back, and we would catch it not as paying customers. It was an uphill drag, so the train ran pretty slow.
So you could just
So,
run on, and would you just hold on to the
Our
side?
objective would be to grab on to the end of the cars and hang on to the ladder until we got home.
Would they get
So-
mad at you for that?
Yeah, they would if they caught you, but they didn't have that many people working the train. And if they said, I saw some kids back there, I'd say, leave them be until and they'll get off whenever they're supposed to.
Oh, that's good.
Unfortunately, or fortunately, my little group, we weren't too good at building rafts. And so our raft would generally break up a little bit downstream, and we would have to swim to the shore and then walk back home.
Oh, no. Would you get all the way? You said the depot was 25 miles away?
The depot is 25 miles away, but you could get on to the train. Well, actually, if the guys got tired of being on the raft or something going downstream, they could get off anywhere and catch
Oh.
the train as it goes by.
I guess that makes
Right.
sense if it's going back home. Okay. That's
So
good.
that was one of the things. The other thing we used the river for was to, we had our swimming holes, and to serve the areas of where our coal camp was, we had 3 swimming holes.
Wow.
One was, the bottom place is called Douglas Bottom.
Douglas Bottom. Okay.
Right, I thought of it. And one swimming hole was in Douglas Bottom, which is where the black folks could swim. The other swimming hole was just up from the main area where I lived, and was called, it is just called a swimming hole. And that's where most all of the white folks went.
Yeah.
And then on upstream farther than that was a place called the Cement Button, was what it was referred to. And it was a place where at one time or another they had put cement and concrete together and built something that wound up being like a dam. And it wound up with always fresh water off of the hills, and it was very deep, and it was very clear and clean.
Oh, wow.
And that's where the older teenagers went,
Okay.
and some adults.
That sounds like the cool place to be.
Right. And I went up there a few times, but I never did get in
Oh.
because it was rather dangerous.
Oh.
It was too deep and too cold
Yeah.
to get into.
Oh.
So those were the three areas. And then, like I said, some people fished on there, and we had one black lady that we call Ma Rainey.
Okay.
And she had this special place that she went fishing almost every day.
Wow.
And she would, everybody just loved her. And she'd sit there and fish and catch fish too.
Wow.
And she'd bring a couple of shopping bags full of pre-popped popcorn.
Whoa.
And when the kids would come by and see her, she'd give them some popcorn. And so, she was the main fisher person along there. And us kids would fish a little, and other adults would, but
she
nobody
was the
caught
main.
fish like Ma Rainey.
That's awesome.
So
What kind of fish were there?
they were not what I would call eating type fish.
Okay.
They weren't like bass or crappie
Yeah.
or catfish or anything like that, although there were catfish in there, but they were mainly what we call little suckers,
Okay.
about 6 or 8 inches long.
Little.
And that's why the black folks really did most of the fishing.
Okay.
Because they'd eat those things, and we didn't go about eating them too much. But anyway, it was fun to catch them.
Yeah, I bet.
But that was the activity that was predominant on Old Piney during the summer months of the year. And I'll mention the other thing about Old Piney. In each coal camp, although in this particular deal, there was a coal company supplied doctor, and he had a doctor's office. And everybody would go to the same doctor from all of those little camps around there. And before you could go in the water in the summertime, you had to get shots for typhoid fever.
Oh.
And what I thought was interesting when we recently had our epidemic
Yeah.
here is you're having trouble getting parents to get their families vaccinated these days.
Right.
In those days, there was a big line waiting. Everybody wanted their kids vaccinated
Huh.
before they went in the creek.
I don't know much about typhoid fever. Is it spread through water?
It's spread through water, and it's a virus type thing, like it's a fever type thing.
Yeah. Huh.
But you had to get, and there was nobody around anywhere to check to see if you had a card that showed you had your shot.
Yeah.
Nobody ever checked on you, but
Probably
parents
'cause
were
everyone did
very
it.
strict to make sure that all the kids in that community had their shots before they went in the water in the summer.
Huh. And I guess it worked. You didn't get typhoid fever.
Right, I never did know if anybody had ever got typhoid fever.
That's good.
So
Sounds like a great community to grow up in.
it was, and there was a lot to do, like the activities I just talked about with respect to Old Piney. One of the other things that would do was just the general community of the men and women. I alluded or maybe even said the fact that it was a very segregated community. We had a different church, a different store, a different everything for the black people and for the white people, and they were different. But each day in the coal mine, the black people and the white men would go shoulder to shoulder in the coal mines and work on their knees all day, every day, side by side.
Wow.
And plus the men especially, of course during the week they worked hard and it was manual labor all day and they were tired during the week. On the weekend, the men, almost all of them, would dress up in suits and ties and hats, and they would sit over on the steps that went up to the entry to the company stores that they had in the community, or sit on the railroad tracks and just talk
Both.
for hours.
Wow.
And that's it. The black people would be there, and the white people would be there.
All together. That's great.
And they would visit, and I'll never forget the time I was over there once and sitting by my granddad, and one of the black guys got up and says, "Well, folks, I got to go home. It's about supper time." And they said, "Oh, Joe," or whatever his name was, said, "Sit around and visit some more with us before you go." He said, "No." Said, "That black woman that I'm married to will beat me up if I'm late for supper."
Oh, no.
So it was that type of community and that type of rapport between the black men and the white men, but everything was segregated. We went to separate schools, we went to separate churches, and you had to do everything separate,
Yeah.
including the black kids and white kids were not supposed to play together,
Oh,
but we did.
I like that.
We did all the time. And my grandmother that lived across from us, I'll just insert this so you know why I'm saying this. My mother got sick with cancer when I was about 6 years old
I'm
or
so
so,
sorry.
and died 2 or 3 years later. And my grandmother across the street would kind of look after us kids. And in the summertime, I'd come in, and my younger brother and I'd come in, and my grandmother, who was very, very prejudiced, I guess you might say, would say, "Have y'all been over in town playing?" We said, "Yes." She said, "You know your dad don't want you playing with those black boys." And I said, "Yeah, I know, Grandma." But we'd go back next day. And
Had too much
especially,
fun.
I'll tell you this, that we played, my little group of buddies would play with this black person's kids. She had 3 boys, and because she'd fix us tea and some lunch and stuff, and she's real nice to us. And we'd always play with these 3 boys, and you know what the boys' names were?
I don't know.
The 3 boys, I don't think that these were their real names, but these were the names they went by. And everybody in the community knew them by this, was Jackson, Sambo, and Tough Titty. You pardon me for saying that, but and that's what everybody knew. That oldest one.
That was one of the last things I think I expected
Right.
you to say right there.
But they referred to him as that. He was a big boy and old, but he didn't talk much.
Oh.
And but he, everybody in the community knew him because he was, like I said, was a big old boy, but he
Wow.
didn't ever bother anybody. And the women would yell at him and hi, Tough Titty. They call him. And so that's the black kids that we played with the most.
That's nice. I'm glad that you guys, I
So-
don't know, were playing together.
One of the other things, you have any questions, I'll go on to another.
No,
Another thing that we did is a big deal, but it was kind of diverted by the fact that some people had so many kids and some didn't. But the Christmas time activities, because everybody in the coal camp, they were union and they were hired in the coal mines, and everybody made the same amount of money.
Everybody in the community?
Everybody in the community,
Wow.
except the big bosses.
Yeah. Huh.
But all of the coal miners made the same union wage, whether you were black, white, or whatever.
Wow.
And so that was okay. So everybody went real all out for Christmas, except those who had graduated up into the 7 and 8 and 9 kids, which some of them had.
Oh, yeah. But they weren't
And,
going all out.
Yeah, but we had my grandmother especially liked to do things because all of her kids and the grandkids lived in that community, and they were all there, and so she liked to do things up at the house and everything. And she had always had the nicest tree that was decorated, and they put. Have you ever heard of angel hair?
Ain't like the pasta?
Angel hair.
Hair?
Yeah.
Maybe not.
What
I
it
don't
was
know.
spun glass, real thin,
Oh.
fine spun glass. And you'd spread this over the tree and put it especially around each light. And when you turn on the tree, it would just go little beads of light all over that tree.
Wow.
And so my grandmother would always have that, one of the nicest trees in the whole town, and it would be just fraught with angel hair all over it.
That sounds so
That she
nice.
would-
Is it like tinsel, kind of, or?
Well, it's real thin and tender. It's just fibers.
Oh, okay.
It's very thin.
Oh.
But people would come by to see Grandma Terry's tree every year to see what it looked like, see what Grandma Terry had done this year to it.
That's
So
awesome.
she did it for us.
I love that. And then I guess this is skipping ahead a little bit, but I heard that you got into the Air Force maybe a little younger than most people
Yes.
do.
Yes, I went into the Air Force, and I can insert these stories. I went in, I joined when I was 16.
That's you. Are you supposed to be 16?
It's supposed to be 18.
Okay. Were you just ready to go?
Well, I had started, I'd mentioned earlier about my mother being sick, and my mother got sick with cancer, And I was just at the age of where I could start school, but I wasn't quite old enough.
Yeah.
And they talked to the school principal, and so that they'd have somebody to watch me, so to speak. They said, we'll let him start school early
Okay.
if he can make the grades and everything. So I started in the first grade when I was 4.
Wow.
And so I graduated from high school when I was 16.
Yeah, so you were just ahead of everybody
Right.
the whole time.
And the Korean War was going on, and I say all, but probably 20 some of my buddies from my class in high school were all joining the Air Force at once.
Oh.
And I didn't want to be left behind. But so I got, I lied about my age, as a matter of fact. And
Could you
and
just write
the-
down a different age?
well, the way I did it, and it was not uncommon in those coal camps, because I mentioned about each coal camp had a doctor on duty. Well, the doctor always, or not always, but pretty much always, delivered the new babies in the homes.
Oh.
And so the paperwork they filled out was not always very thorough, and mine was kind of questionable. And so I was over in town, and I saw the recruiting sergeant for the Air Force standing there, and I said, "Hey, what do I got to do to get in the Air Force?" And he looked at me and he said, "Son, have you finished high school?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Well, bring me your diploma to prove it."
Oh.
And so I enlisted with my high school diploma instead of a birth certificate.
You're like, that I can do.
Yeah.
I can give you a diploma.
Yeah.
Wow.
But the funny part of this is, our anecdote to this story is that I said that I wanted to join because all my buddies were. Well, all of the other high schools around were about the same way. And they had a big swearing-in ceremony and swore in 150 young men into the Air Force at one time.
What?
There
Oh.
in the courthouse square over at the main town. And there are 150 of them, and 147 of those went to Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio for their basic training.
Wow.
And me and 2 others went to New York. So here I was, I had gotten up all this courage to join the Air Force because I was going to go with all my
With your
buddies.
friends.
And all my friends were waving on one train, and I was getting on another.
Oh, no. Where in New York was your training?
It was at Geneva, New York, which was it's in the Finger Lakes area where Syracuse and Ithaca, Cornell University
Yeah.
is. It's right in there, and Buffalo. All of those are right in there, in the western part of New York.
Okay.
So
Wow.
that was a.
Did you get to meet up with any of your friends again later on?
I saw them. I'd see some of them every now and then because when later on in the service, I started flying cargo planes, and I would go into various bases, and I'd see some of them.
Yeah.
They were all scattered everywhere.
Oh, wow. So they would have been split up eventually,
Right.
I guess.
Yeah, they were all split up anyway.
Oh, wow. Well, I thought that was going to be how you got to Texas. Because you live
Well,
in
that-
Texas now, right? Or no?
Yeah, but I got to Texas by coming through Oklahoma State.
Okay.
Because I got based in Oklahoma and met my lovely bride. And we got married, and we went to, I was based in Oklahoma and met her at where I was stationed, and we got married, went to Stillwater to Oklahoma State.
Oh, wow. I guess I skipped ahead a bit there, but how did you guys meet?
I guess her Sunday school teacher,
Do you want to come join us?
yeah,
You're welcome to.
we met at church,
Oh, that's nice.
so,
That's sweet. And you asked her out?
yeah. I see. And where else was I on the coal camp deal? I talked about my black friends that I played with. But we had, I'll tell you a little bit about our family. We had all of mine, and this was my mother's side of the family, lived in a coal camp there. And my mother had, let's see, it was 3 or 4 sisters and 1 brother, I think. And they all lived in the coal camp. And I guess with the exception of 1, none of them had any kids.
Oh.
And so by virtue of not having any kids at Christmas time, us kids would get lots of gifts because those people, they didn't have any kids of their own to buy for.
That kind of worked out.
And they'd buy for us. But I kind of learned a real lesson. 1 year there, I was having fun with all of my toys that I'd been given. And we went back to school, and the teacher said, I want everybody to stand up and tell what they got for Christmas. And so they started sending them. She did it alphabetical, and there was this one little kid named Buck Bedwell. I never will forget his name. And so he got up early because his name started with a B. And he just had one little toy that he had gotten for Christmas, and his family had about 9 kids. And so that made me feel real bad. So when it came my turn, I told him I had one toy too. And there's a little ball or something I told him about. But I never see Christmas time come by that I don't remember that thing, and it really made me feel bad that I had all those toys and this other little kid didn't have but one.
Yeah.
So
I think it's a good, memorable experience
yeah.
to have.
I had one of my uncles, I was telling you about all these kids. One of my uncles that married one of my wife's sisters, he was a mean guy.
Oh, no.
Let's put it that way. And he was always doing something mean to get the kids in trouble and everything. And as a matter of fact, when he got married, they got married there at the little church in the coal camp. I say church, but it was the schoolhouse. That's where they went to church. And he was giving cigars to everybody.
To all the kids?
And well, to the adults. And then he started giving ones to the kids. And I said, I don't know what to do with this. And he said, oh, I'll show you how to smoke it. So he lit it up and gave me the cigar and how to smoke. Told me how to smoke it. And I got sick. Oh,
no.
I was never so sick in all my life. And then later on, he pulled at least one more good one. He pulled several in. But he worked supporting the coal mines. And what he did was he had a big timber truck, big long bedded truck, and he'd go up into the wilderness and cut wood to make what they called support posts for the coal mines. And he'd cut them, maybe 2 foot or 3 foot, something like that long, and sell them to the coal mines. And then they'd use them to prop up the ceilings in the mines so they wouldn't cave in and injure or kill the miners. And that's what he did. So one time he was up in there and he caught a hoot owl.
Oh.
And he brought it back into the coal camp, and that was the big deal. And his name was Buell Cochran, but everybody called him Boone. And everybody said, Boone's got a bird up there that y'all had never seen. So us kids, we ran up there, and we said, what is it? And he said, it's a parrot.
Oh, no.
And us kids said, well, make him talk. And Uncle said, well, he won't talk unless y'all cuss him. And so he said, cuss him and he'll talk back to you. And so us kids there, we were cussing that guy, and you wouldn't believe some of the words that came out of those kids' mouth. And of course, then some of our parents came up, my dad included, and heard us cussing and carrying on. And I got a spanking like you wouldn't forget.
Boone's just getting everybody.
Yeah. But anyway, to close the story up about Boone, World War II started, and he went off and joined the Marines and became somewhat of a hero and fought in Saipan and the Philippines and Iwo Jima and places like that, and came back and went to work as a guard at the Federal Women's Prison. It was near our place, and he later became a head of the American Legion in West Virginia there.
Wow.
And so he repented from his mean streak of earlier years.
He changed his ways.
Yeah. So,
What a guy.
yeah.
Gosh. Oh, man. So you ended up in Oklahoma.
Right.
And then, did I hear that you worked at NASA?
Yeah. I worked. I guess I worked.
LTV first.
Well, LTV, which supported NASA.
Oh, okay.
But I worked supporting NASA pretty much all of 50 years,
Wow.
pretty much, and out of Dallas. And then we moved to Houston and finished up there. We were staying on at Oklahoma State for me to get my master's. And we just got so poor we couldn't endure it. So about that time, there was a guy from LTV in Dallas came up there wanting to hire some people, and my advisors told him, said, hey, I got a good guy for you that you can hire. And because he needs to go to work. And so I hired in there, and we worked in Dallas for a number of years, and then we came down to Houston.
Okay. So what were you getting your master's in?
Mechanical engineering.
Oh, okay. I gotcha. So then that's what you did with LTV?
Yeah, and then I came to Houston with Rockwell International, and then changed to USA, which was owned by Rockwell too. and finished up.
Okay. And you're still in Houston, right?
No,
Oh, no.
we live in Fort Worth now.
Oh, I was all mixed up.
Yeah.
So you've lived in all the
Yeah.
lots of cities.
Right.
Oh man.
But we, it's kind of sort of wind up the coal camp deal. What? We moved, my mother died when I was 9, and my dad remarried a couple of years later, and we moved about 7 or 8 miles away. He married this lady who owned a farm up there, and we moved to the farm. And but I finished clear through high school with all of those buddies and friends I had at the coal camp.
So were the coal camps like all of the men were working in the mine, and then it was their families living in the camp?
Yes,
Okay.
and they were, the people who lived in the camp were predominantly, and I mean predominantly, like 90% or more were actual coal miners. You know, they did what it took to dig the coal out of the ground.
Yeah.
And ship it out. And then the other supporting people, they'd have an engineer, a general superintendent, the coal mine doctor, as I said, and then they'd have a coal company owned store that would be run by people that the coal company hired that weren't coal mines, but they hired it. That's the interesting thing. The coal company stores, I always said after I was an adult and thought about these things, that it was a good way to control your budget and so forth, because the coal company stores sold primarily to the people in that coal company camp community. And what you do was they'd call it cutting script, and the coal company printed up coal company money,
Oh.
which were coins. They were all coins, and they'd have, like Lilybrook would have an L cut in it, and they'd have $1, 50 cents, a quarter, nickels and dimes and pennies. And you could go buy groceries and stuff at the company store between paydays by cutting script. I said, you take this little card and they'd stamp it and give you $5 or whatever you wanted. And but you were limited on how much you could get, and you couldn't overdraw based because you were drawing against your next
Your
paycheck.
paycheck.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And so it to me, it kind of controlled charge accounts in those days.
You couldn't really get into debt, I guess.
Right. But you could get as little as a nickel. I remember my mother, my birthday one time, gave me a dime to go to the store and get a double-decker ice cream. And she gave me the card. She didn't have a dime. So I took it down and cut script for a dime and bought an ice cream.
Wow. Did you like living on the farm, or were you sad to move away from the camp?
I liked living on it pretty good, but we didn't get along with our stepmother pretty good.
Oh, okay.
And we had, which later changed.
Oh.
It turned out by the time I had my kids, we started going home, and all of her kids and my dad's kids were off and gone. We had a good relationship.
That's sweet.
But-
So she had kids coming in as well?
Yeah, she only had one at home. We had three, my sister, who was a junior in high school, about ready to graduate, and then my younger brother and myself, and then she had a daughter who was a year older than me.
Okay.
But that's the only one she had on. She had two sons, but they were gone off in the military at the time. And so things turned out in the end pretty good.
That's nice.
But, and I think it was, looking back, it's because of my older sister and my stepsister didn't get along very good, and they were fairly close to age.
Yeah. That makes sense.
And I believe it was because my stepsister got a Social Security check every month, and my real sister didn't get anything, and so they'd go to the store and buy clothes and stuff for my stepsister, and my sister would be left hanging out. But that's another story.
I think that would annoy me too.
Yeah.
I wouldn't like that.
But that went away in later years, fortunately.
Yeah.
And we felt good. We just buried my stepsister this past year.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I'm glad everyone seemed to get along later on.
Yeah.
That's nice. Oh, that's beautiful. I love the view here.
Is anything else I can see?
I don't know.
Do you need to record like an intro?
I can do that. I don't know.
Okay.
Well, I appreciate you
say-
talking to me.
You say your name, Granddad? You just introduce yourself.
Oh, Frank Richmond, Richmond, like Richmond, Virginia.
It's a good name.
And see, I would
That's not your full name.
say
It's okay.
there's one thing that I was gonna.
Do we miss one? Do we miss a story? I got all night. I don't have to be anywhere.
Yeah. I was trying to.
You didn't talk about your high school sports, football and baseball.
Oh.
And all of that, yeah.
Are you all talked out?
Hmm?
Are you all talked out? Your tea's right there if you need to sit.
I had one more thing I was gonna.
I can't remember his last name. Your last name.
Was it a
say.
coal camp thing or a?
Little Freddie. Your buddy Freddie.
Oh, I didn't tell you about
Tall tales about Halloween and
about my friend Freddie. Okay. And this is a story
What?
that that I'll have to put a
disclaimer.
disclaimer
Disclaimer. Okay.
on this, that there may be parts of the story that are true.
All right. I like that. Doesn't have to be all true.
And one of the parts that are true is the first part, the introductory part. We lived in a coal camp. I said, you know, there were rows of houses and things, and then there were a bunch of little hollows that would go up between two little sort of mountains.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd go up through there, and people would stick a little house up in there or something. And there were all of the kinds of those around. There were probably 20 or 30 in the community that I lived in. And up one of these deals was this little old house and this little old lady that I always thought she must be 100 years old, but obviously not. And she had all wrinkled skin and straight, long hair, gray, and mixed other colors into it. And she talked with a loud, squeaky voice. And we always thought that she was a witch. And our parents told us not to go playing up there or talk to her or anything like that. And so my buddy Freddie and I were up on the hill above her little old house one day playing ball. And I threw the ball and Freddie missed it and it went down, rolled down the hill and rolled into her yard.
Uh-oh.
And so he went down there and walked around and didn't see anybody. And he went over the fence and was going to get his ball, and she ran out and grabbed it and ran in the house. And she said, "Come on in, little boy, and I'll give you your ball." And then she stuck out and said, "Come on in and I'll give you a glass of tea if you want your little ball." And so finally Freddie went in and gave her the ball. But I kept waiting and waiting and he didn't come out. And I went down to the fence and I'd yell for him and he never did come out. And so I ran down to the main part of the coal camp. And there were some of these men sitting out on the steps of the company store that I mentioned. Mm-hmm. And I told them about what had happened. And so 4 or 5 of them came up there to see what was going on. And they went in and pecked on the door and yelled for Freddie and everything. And there was no answer or anything. They tried to open the door and the door was locked. And so they finally kicked the door in. And they went in there and it opened up into the kitchen and it didn't appear like there was anything in there. And laying on the kitchen table was a rag, a hank of hair, and a bone. And that's all they found.
What? Wait. What? Huh?
And we never did see Freddie again.
Freddie was a real person who after this was gone. All right, so I'll hold on to the fact that there may be some truth to this story, maybe. That's awesome.
He had her hooked. He got her.
That's
That story creeps up about every Halloween.
Oh, that's a good Halloween story.
I told that on Halloween, or one of my girls had a bunch of girlfriends over when they were, 6, 7 years old, over to our house to spend the night on the weekend, and I told them that story, and they just screamed and yelled and grabbed me around the neck.
It's a good slumber party story. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you talking to me. It's been great hearing your stories. They're really interesting. I didn't really know anything about coal camps, and now I feel like I know a lot.
I'll just, as an aside, the coal camp that I grew up in, I was born in the coal camp. As a matter of fact, all 5 of us kids were born in that coal camp. Mm. And what was I going to say? But, that coal camp came into being probably in the early 20s, 1922 or something, when they built it up. And it built up at its peak, when things started recovering after the, what do you call
The
it?
Great Depression?
After the Depression, yeah. And then, of course, from there it rolled into World War II, in which everything boomed in. But it stayed in business at a very prolific state, clear till probably the early 50s, about 54 or something.
Okay.
And it was still booming when I left to go to the Air Force.
Your dad was still working in.
Yeah, my dad was still working some then. He worked in there 40 years.
Do you still have family there now?
They've migrated north and south.
Away.
Yeah, all my family's pretty much gone. There could be some first cousins on my dad's side that are around in the area. My dad was kind of a strange person. He was from a family that was raised on a farm over in another part of the county that they had 12 or 13 boys and girls, kids.
Wow.
And of all of the, say, 13, every one of them or the wives or the girls' husbands all worked on the railroad for the railroad company. And Dad worked in the coal mines.
Huh.
And I never did know why that was.
Interesting.
And Dad never was very close to very many of his brothers and sisters. Several of them lived probably within 20 miles of us when I was growing up, and I've never seen them to this day.
Wow. So your dad's dad worked in the coal mine, and then
No, my
sorry.
dad's dad was the farmer.
Oh, he was a
that-
farmer, and
that
everybody
had
else
the
was
13 kids.
at the railroad. I got you.
And all of his kids and the girls married railroad people.
Huh.
But
Except
my
your dad.
went over and worked in the coal mines. for some
Wow.
reason.
Interesting. Huh.
So that was kind of strange.
Yeah. Huh. Well, I've probably taken enough of your time, I guess, here. Unless you got any more, I don't know.
You're gonna have so much stuff to go through.
Could be here all night. Well, I'm glad we got to the Teddy story. Was that his name?
Freddie.
Teddy? Freddie. Now I'll remember it. Like Freddy's.
Yeah,
Freddie was a real person.
Oh, okay.
yeah, he was. As a matter of fact, he about the time I retired down in Houston, he called me up on the phone, and he was in Houston. His son, he had a son that had moved to Houston, and he was down there to see him. But we were loading the car to leave on vacation,
Oh.
and so
no.
I didn't get to see him.
Oh. And he just knew you were.
Which really didn't need Freddie.
And he had
Oh. Shocking.
run me down some way.
It's amazing that he knew you were there and got a
Yeah.
hold of you. So he wasn't eaten by a witch. Now we know.
Right.
Shocking. Man. Well, this has been fun. I liked it.
That's one talented young lady right here.
What'd she say?
That is, I said that Sarah is one talented young lady.
I just like listening to stories.
Yeah.
Well, Should I turn this thing off? Thank you so much. It's been fun.
Alrighty.